Hello and welcome. After one introductory episode and 2 episodes of exploring without getting any real context, this episode gives us the first taste of what is to come in the first arc of this season. But I do mean only a taste. We're not going to find out everything quite yet. This episode does, however, introduce us to some significant plot points that this first arc will hold. Until we get there, however, suffice to say that this episode starts out pretty poorly. Basically, they're walking through a desert, complaining about how hot it is and trying to figure out what to do next. The only 2 things of interest are a series of crookedly placed road signs that they notice, and telephone poles that don't have any wires. Beyond that, the scene is made up of crappy dialogue and bad jokes. The sub did take this opportunity, however, to establish the fact that Sora was a little bit of a loner, and she was having problems with the fact that her Digimon, Biyomon, was being so clingy. But there's really nothing like that in this scene. To the relief of the kids, who had been tolerating the great heat for some period of time, they come across a village populated with a large amount of Yokomon. Yokomon being the previous evolution of Biyomon, which makes sense since this is Sora's episode. They mingle with the Yokomon for a few minutes until the conflict of this episode shows up. A nearby mountain is smoking from the top, giving off the appearance of a volcano. The Yokomon are distressed by this because their water supply comes from that mountain and they're worried about something bad happening to it. Now, for some reason, something fairly significant gets changed here. In the sub, the Yokomon explain that Mirahashi Mountain, that's the so-called volcano, is guarded by a Digimon named Meramon, who they seem to trust and believe to be friendly. In the dub, however, they say they don't go near Mirahashi Mountain because they're terrified of Meramon. We get our first look at Meramon. Okay, yeah, that's better. And Tai says that he's crying. So anyway, Meramon starts running down the mountainside. In the sub, it was because he wanted to go rape some Pyokomon, but the dub tries to play this as if he's in pain, and is simply running around like a madman because of it. So, to quickly recap, in the sub, we had a Meramon who protected the mountain and the Yokomon trusted, suddenly turn evil and start running down the hill to go kill some Yokomon. Meanwhile, in the dub, we had a Meramon who was always evil according to the Yokomon, but is crying in pain as he's running down the hill. Which one makes more sense? And I still don't know why this needed to be changed. It just doesn't make very much sense. And I'll have a little more on this later, but let's continue with the episode. I'm not positive, but I think the dub is trying to imply that Meramon cannot control his actions, but is capable of controlling what he's saying. It's really kind of confusing, though, especially when you throw in the fact that the Yokomon have always thought Meramon was evil, so it's kind of difficult to make out what this scene is trying to portray. They attempt to attack Meramon as he runs down the hill, but they find that their attacks, more than anything, seem to serve only to make him bigger. The conflict in this episode is actually pretty good. I have to say, running into a village of sweet, innocent, and completely unable to defend themselves Yokomon who are being attacked, supposedly anyway, is a pretty good obstacle to overcome, and it's the first time we've really seen these guys be welcomed into this new world. Anyway, Biyomon evolves into Birdramon and beats back Meramon, which doesn't make a ton of sense when you think about it, because we just established that fire makes Meramon bigger. But whatever. Sora takes a moment to reflect on the fact that Biyomon evolved to help her when she was in danger. Which would have meant a little more if this episode had taken the time to establish the fact that Sora is a little bit of a loner and not great with people. And now we get to the confusing part. We find out that Meramon was acting evil because he had a black gear inside of him. The black gear that we supposedly saw crash into the mountainside just a few minutes ago. When Birdramon beat Meramon, the black gear was purged from his body and he came down to the village to apologize to the Yokomon for his actions. This seems to strongly imply that he was always good until the black gear showed up. So why did the Yokomon think he was always evil to begin with? Was he misunderstood? If so, why did they even let him come down to the village to apologize in the first place? It just really doesn't make that much sense. I could sit here for a while and ask a lot of different questions about this storyline change, but let's just move on and suffice to say that it's a stupid and pointless change, and who knows why they decided to make it. So the Yokomon have a feast.
We were just about to have a feast.
Great! But the food really isn't human appropriate, so there's not much they can do with it. And the episode ends. I like this episode because it starts pointing us in the direction that this season is going to go, and the Yokomon village subplot was actually pretty interesting because we actually see a group of Digimon welcome the humans into the world. But why they had to change the motivations of Meramon, I don't have a clue. On the whole though, this episode's fine.